I want to talk to successful people and learn about the adversity they went through, how they got through it, what we can learn from it, and help us all collectively move forward. Underdogs don't stop. Welcome to Underdog Untold, the show about underdogs. Why do I love underdogs? Because it's all about the untapped potential. Who's been in an underdog situation? I think every single person who's watching this and every single person who's not has been an underdog. And that's why I think it can relate to all of us. Today, I have a special guest, although I feel like I'm going to be saying that every single time because I pick special guests. She is the CEO of 1871, the number one private incubator in the world. She's been a partner at McKinsey. She's been a chief innovation officer at Kellogg School of Management. She's been to Harvard Business School. She's just got a lot of credentials and brand names behind her that make her, in many eyes, successful. So, Betsy Ziegler, I'm really happy for you to be here today. How are you?
I'm great, Naveen. Thanks for having us. And you and I have had the opportunity to work together a little bit on the work between Loud and 1871. So terrific to join you.
Yes, and actually talk about an underdog scenario where a couple years ago, Loud Capital, which I co-founded a few years back, partnered with the Chicago Bulls, which took a long time to build a relationship and to plan a large venture competition at the United Center. It was a big deal. That's where Betsy and I met, and 1871 provided a lot of services to the companies that we were talking to. We did the final competition, and the next day, the pandemic hit the world, and NBA
Exactly.
canceled all the games. That was literally the next day.
Yeah.
So although we got our event out, we got a winner, we had a great time. The community of Chicago was very engaged. The next day, it was like, now let's focus on a lot of serious things in the health community. But anyways, here we are. It's great to have you here, and I'm just going to jump right into it. Number one, for a lot of the folks who are watching or will watch this, how do you describe an incubator to people who aren't in the startup world or the entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, I mean, we are a nonprofit organization. Not all incubators are, but 1871 is a nonprofit organization. Our job is to help increase the probability of success of everyone we're working with and shorten their time frame to reach that success and their time frame is defined by them. Again, that might be a different philosophical standpoint than some other incubators. It's incubator is tended to be used for people that are very early in their journey. We have about 480 what we call early stage founders that are somewhere between I have an idea, I've built the first version of my product, or I've launched. And then, Naveen, as you know, we also support growth companies and late stage companies and corporates on their innovation strategies, which would be less incubation.
Yeah.
And so 1871 is more of an innovation hub, but that incubator portion is where we got our start.
Yeah, and I've have some experience starting a few businesses and needing resources, needing mentors, needing some structure in a very unstructured pathway, because entrepreneurship is cool that it's unstructured, but it's also very scary, and it feels lonely, right?
For sure, lonely, and it's hard. And there's lots of things. There are some things that you can shortcut, where you don't have to make all the same mistakes of people that have come before you. You have to make some of them. I'm sorry, dog. I'm sorry. I'll put him away.
It's an underdog show. It's all good. Everyone's welcome.
Let me give him some treats. He's a puppy. His name is Eddie George. For any of you Buckeye fans out there, Eddie.
That is awesome. Go Bucks for this Saturday. For those who are
getting him treats, I apologize to the audience, but we live in a world where children and pets make appearances. So we try to help people focus on the things that they have to figure out for their own business versus having to figure out that and everything else about how to start a company.
And if you had to go to the early stages of a company and someone has an idea and maybe even a co-founder, and some thoughts on paper and they come into an incubator type scenario, what is some of the most common things that you feel put them in an underdog scenario? Like what they don't know, what's against them, what they don't anticipate. Would you say there's some commonalities?
Yeah, I think there's several. I think one, which is hard for lots of people, is they fall in love with their solution
Yeah.
before they talk to potential customers, and versus falling in love with the problem. And so that's probably the number one that I see. The second one that we tend to see is many of our founders are not technical, right? They need other people to join their team to help build out the technical portion. And it should be clear. I should make it clear that 1871 is for technology enabled or technology companies. It's not for if you're opening a restaurant or a landscaping business, right? We're not the best ones suited to support you. Having said that, the second biggest thing that we see people make mistakes on is that they, before they really know, right, before they've talked to customers, before they have tested anything in a very simple on paper way, they hire and pay for technology that most of the time is wasted money, and it can be very expensive. And so we try to get it out ahead of those two things for people. And it's great that they're bullish and that they have a, that they're racing down a path with a point of view. We just need to help, put some structure on
Yeah.
that and give them even more conviction before they invest a lot of money or give away a lot of their company to people that may not be the right uh, the right people to support them in getting to where they want to be.
Yeah, and I can relate to falling in love with your idea so much where you really think it's the best idea in the world. You feel like you're the best person to do this and save the world. And then 9 people later, you're number one, either not communicating it well, the solution is really not that practical, or the solution is too big, and you're not
Yep.
starting out small. And
Yep.
it can be all the above. But I've just learned that, when people say validate your service or your product or your company, you know, it's really about asking a bazillion people. And I tell people, go to a coffee shop, talk to a stranger and say this. And if they look at you like you have 5 eyes and they're like, I don't get it, again, that's on you. That's
Right.
on you to say, I didn't communicate that well. This idea doesn't really resonate. But just talk to a lot of people. And that's, I feel like, a underutilized, free, and economical way to get information. Um,
Yeah, we call that customer discovery, and it's hard for people, but if this is what you're gonna dedicate your life to, or a big chunk of your life to, that's a hurdle you got to get over, because
yeah.
people, there and when you talk to people, you have to, and I hope this phrase is okay to use, but you have to give them permission to tell you that they don't like your baby,
Yes.
right? Like,
Permit.
you have to make it okay for them to say, you know,
Absolutely.
don't get it, don't like it, etc. And that's super hard. It's super hard for people.
There's some people who say, "I want feedback," and then they get feedback, and then they take it personally. And so it's really about, and I tell people, "Give me feedback. I know I have a lot of issues that you can probably help me with." And I always say that because then it kind of gives permission and
Yes,
um,
exactly.
alleviates a little bit of a barrier to get real feedback. I would love, first of all, I want to say thank you everyone for joining today. I know it's live and before a long week or a holiday week of Thanksgiving, so appreciate this, but I'm really excited to get Betsy on here because she has been involved in so many different things. When we were talking a few weeks back, Betsy, you were telling me about probably a big event that happened when you were at McKinsey, and it was before you were about to become partner. And then something, happened. Do you mind digging into this scenario, which I feel like is a
Sure.
very big underdog scenario?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know how many people listening or will listen to the tape version have r- moved through a professional services type of apprenticeship, which is basically what the consulting firms are. But you're in there for a couple of years working super hard when you have the potential to be considered for a partnership. And in my scenario, I was about 5-ish, a little over 5 years in, crisscrossing the country on flights, serving a couple different clients, working super hard. Not with the motivation that I had to be a partner to feel like I made it, but once you get to a certain, like, I didn't join McKinsey with the goal of becoming a partner,
Yeah.
but after you've been there for that long a time and you're that close, you're like, well, of course I want to be,
Yeah.
of course I want that. And I was boarding a plane, um, moving from one city to flying out to Salt Lake City, and I got a phone call in the while I was on the jet bridge boarding, and I'm exhausted, and I get a phone call, and it's the very senior partner of a team that I was working on, saying that the client that I'd been serving for 2 years was firing me, not firing McKinsey, but firing me. And the net of it was they gave me, the basically, they were upset about something. To this day, this is in 2004. Okay, so this is 19 years ago.
Wow.
To this day, I still don't know what it was that they were angry about, but they were super angry, and they basically said I hadn't added value to them in 2 years.
Oh,
Right, so this is like a not a great conversation. It was like,
talk about not
you
getting
know
feedback.
what? Yeah,
You
exactly.
know.
And so, I can talk about it with humor and reflection and all of that now, but in the moment it was this devastating. And I, regardless of becoming a partner, like, they
Yeah.
put that to the side, just being told that you had spent thousands of hours trying to help a client for a couple years, and they were telling people that you hadn't added any value and that they wanted you to be off the team. It was a, um just like, gut punch. And so
A gut punch with a
I
lot on the line, right? It's a gut punch. I spent 2 years, thousands of hours servicing a client, which I never heard any feedback, or you didn't really get a sense that that was where their mindset was, correct?
Yeah,
And
yeah, right, exactly.
and then there
No,
happened
it
to
was a
be,
surprise. It was a whole surprise. And the partner that I had been working with most closely was on maternity leave. So my main advocate there was, on maternity leave. And so, regardless, okay. But my first instinct was not, I'm not going to make partner. My first instinct was like this sort of feeling about my, I wasn't used to not performing. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
you're a high
Like, it was that
achiever.
was,
Yeah, you're used.
I mean, that was like deeply, failing. Um, Eddie. Um, and I have to just keep feeding him food, otherwise we might have a
No, it's
loud
okay.
chorus on.
No problem.
Um, and so I took the flight. I got on the flight and I was flying to. It was a different client. I was flying to another client, and I, got on the flight. And then when I got there, my main mentor at McKinsey, who is now, a longtime CEO at a Fortune 100 company, um, said, "Look, Betsy, you have the right to be upset. Obviously, you have the right to be angry, but you have a choice about what happens next." And he said, "Sleep on it, and when you wake up the next day, wake up tomorrow, you have a choice. You have a choice if you can fight this, you can, try to go in and prove your value, you can dispute it, you can ask for a bunch of feedback, you can do all this stuff, or you, can choose to just move forward."
Wow.
And and so I chose to move forward the next day. That doesn't mean, by the way, that I was through that, like, grief
Yeah,
curve, or that
yeah,
I wasn't angry. Like, emotionally, I was still going through it and behind the scenes, but I decided it wasn't worth it, because it would have harmed my colleagues, it would have harmed the firm. It just wasn't worth it. And so I, move forward. And I don't know if you want me to jump to the end of the story here, Naveen, but,
yeah.
I'll pause.
No, go
Okay.
for it. Please do.
So I think my, um that was sort of kind of February, March timeframe, and the next election cycle for becoming a partner was that May. So I was roughly 2 months out from being considered to be a partner, and the firm still elected me a partner, and I guarantee it that it was because of that choice I made in that very difficult moment to just move forward and embrace that and learn from it. And another team picked me up and helped me kind of get established at another client really quickly. Not, I mean, it was, 45 days or so of effort. It wasn't like it was a huge amount of impact. But
Yeah,
but that was very instructive in my life. And I have a number of life mottos that Naveen has heard me say. And one of them is that people remember your response to the bounce and not the bounce. Right. So there's
yes,
like
I
very
love
few
that.
people on the planet that even know. I mean, I've told this story hundreds of times. I think it's important for leaders to talk about their vulnerabilities and their mistakes. And so like I've told the story many hundreds of times. But there's like two people on the planet that I would have to push them hard to even know that that happened at this stage. And I think it's really um been helpful to me, and certainly as me as a coach to members of my team, of like, look, I don't care that you made a mistake. We all make them. What I care is what you how you react to it and what you do next. And those that can't kind of get past it then are in that underdog, right? Then they're kind of, they get stuck.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important piece here. Number one, this adversity, which was a big scenario where after 2 years you really didn't hear much feedback, you got fired. It's embarrassing. There's a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
And you said, hey, listen, weigh this here. There's already a client that's already decided this, which it's in their power to say, we no longer want this person, right?
Yep.
I feel like there's still be a lot of people who dwell on that and try to fight it and spend energy, bring down potential resources and time, and kind of climb backwards or walk backwards.
Yeah.
Easier said than done for me sitting here talking to you right now. But I do feel like there is a pattern of people who tend to be successful. It's not that they don't have those scenarios. They
Of
have
course.
plenty of those scenarios. I mean, that story to me is a big deal, which a lot of people don't realize happens. But
I mean,
you
I can, it's 19 years ago and I can feel it. I mean, I can still feel it from 19 years ago. Yeah. So
Well, I
huge,
can feel
huge
your
deal.
heart rate before you boarded that plane. Like I can't imagine,
And
but I can
crying,
try.
I'm on the jet bridge crying, like literally crying, and not sobbing, but certainly crying. And people are, like, looking
Yeah,
at you, and you're
yeah,
just, I'm good. Just let me have my moment.
yeah.
Just
And,
give
and
me my time.
and I will say another point is in being in a few leadership positions, I do agree with you. See the response to this from your colleagues, from the people you work with, and if it's
Mhm.
like, hey, I want to move forward and learn from it, that is a
Mhm.
big deal. People are watching.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important as a reminder for all of us that people are watching how we react. It's maybe a little embarrassing if we fall, but get up and see if you can just go on with your day. And
The embarrassing thing, I don't even remember being embarrassed. I'm sure I was. I'm 100% sure I was, but I don't even remember that, because people, because I didn't have to tell everybody, like, nope, it's fluid. People serve lots of different clients over time, but yes, there's a, I think other people think in that moment, like when I started to tell that story to other people, I think other people felt like I should be more embarrassed by it, where I felt like, look, I'm ahead of lots of these other people coming up. If we don't help give people perspective when they're at these inflection points in their career, we're doing them a
yeah,
disservice. Is they can, hopefully somebody can learn from the experience I had, to let them know that, hey, look, I'm doing fine,
yeah.
right? Like, since that point, I've done fine, right? The last 19 years have been terrific. I mean, have had ups and downs, of course, but have been largely terrific. You don't have, it doesn't label you for life. It labeled me for, a couple days.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump into another thing we were speaking about. And everyone
Yeah.
who's joined, thanks for joining the discussion. Feel free to chime in and ask some questions if you'd like. Betsy's worn a lot of hats and she's has a lot of interesting experiences. Back in 2009, there was a scenario or a period of time where you said you felt very stuck. And
Yeah.
this is 2009. So this is, you've already been to McKinsey. What were you doing at that time? Were you still at?
I was a partner. I was in my let's see, I made partner in spring of 2004. So this was 5 years later. So I'd been a partner for 5 years.
Okay, so you're a partner at McKinsey now. Again, from an outside perspective, that's very successful at a very reputable consulting firm. And so tell me some of the feelings you were having at that time.
Yeah. So some of you on the call will remember that in 2009, there was a financial crisis that started in fall of '08, and all of my clients were in financial services. So I was doing a lot of work in life insurance, consumer finance, a little bit in retail banking. And, very quickly, my clients decided, hey, they needed a break from McKinsey. That's not the same scenario, right? This was a external market situation that was going on that was like, we need to figure out what's going on here and take a break. And in those couple of moments, like weeks and months that they were doing that in the spring of 2009, I was feeling very stuck. I felt like the only things I could talk about were that the life insurance industry lost 50% of its value. I was an expert in service operations and call centers, so something about call centers. And because I'm such a passionate Buckeye, something about Ohio State. And I felt like I was living in this tiny little box, and those are the only three conversations I was having. And I don't think of myself as an uninteresting person. And so that all of a sudden was like, oh my gosh, I'm in this tiny little box. I'm an uninteresting person. So I like to say a piece of paper. It was not a piece of paper. It was my computer and Excel. And I was 37 at the time. And I wrote down the 40 things I wanted to do by the time I was 40. And these were not like professional aspirations. There was just like a brain dump of things that I wanted to do to help reignite kind of my internal spirit about being more interesting. Again, interesting to myself. I don't, some people will think I'm interesting and a whole bunch of people won't. That's totally fine. I cannot be boring to myself. And so that simple act, it took about 20 minutes. I changed the way I thought about my life and changed the way I thought about ownership of my life and how active of a role you have to take to own your choices. And anybody can do it, but for whatever reason we don't, or I didn't up until that point. And so it took me until I was 37 to like really figure that out. And now I'm 52 and I have continued the tradition. So I did a 50 by 50 and now sadly I'm on a 60 by 60. These are rules that I set for myself. It's just a pattern.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to a few questions in a second. So I just want to clarify, you're feeling stuck. There's a lot of things kind of that fallen down around you. This is post 2008. And by writing things down, that gave you clarity and strength. Because I know the power of writing. For me, it's inspirational. It's clarity for me, but that's when I'm in a pretty good place mentally. But if you're not in a great space, let's say, are you telling me that really helped you?
Totally. And it wasn't sentences. It was like 1 to 40, boom. And it was things like, I mean, they might sound insane to some people, but like I wanted to meet Bette Midler because I love Bette Midler.
Did you meet her?
I wanted to go to, I did.
Oh.
I wanted to see Easter Island. I wanted to see, keep in mind, I'd been a McKinsey partner for 5 years. So this was not about, I was fortunate to have access to the means to do certain things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the Aspen Ideas Festival. I wanted to go to Sundance Film Festival. I just started doing them. So I wrote down the list and I just started doing them. And people around me were like, well, how did you get to do that? I was a seat filler for the Primetime Emmys. They were like, how did you get to do that? I'm like, well, I figured it out. I wanted to do these things. I figured it out. And that has allowed, on the list, I'm a single parent of a now 10-year-old. That was on the list. How do you think about, making a choice about whether or not I wanted to be a parent, even if I wasn't in a, even if I wasn't married. And so so it was like fun things and it was deeply personal things, but almost, I don't think anything on there was actually about professional achievement. Um, but then I had to say the reason it worked is because I took action, because I started doing them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think that's a huge lesson for a lot of us is writing things down can bring some clarity and maybe some control to your life. And then you kind of have a plan that is from you only. And by following those actions, you can make it happen. And number two, probably overcome a lot of doubt and, um, just get out of a rut, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think you have to plan to live an interesting life. And again, interesting is defined by you because all of us have a different definition of that. And I see a question in the chat, which we'll get to, but that process set up the conditions for which I decided to leave McKinsey.
yeah. And
It's not exactly that, but I mean, it wasn't because of that list. It wasn't, I didn't write that on the list, but that experience of doing the list and taking advantage of all these other opportunities around me then led me to the decision to leave.
okay. And just this dissect that just a touch. It takes a while to even be able to go into McKinsey, then become a partner. That's a big deal. Then to jump off into is that when you went straight into the CEO position or from McKinsey or
No, I announced my decision to leave McKinsey in the spring of 2010
okay.
or summer of 2010. I left in 2011 because when you're a partner of these firms, it takes a while to unwind your client work, and then you
Yeah.
took some time. I literally bought a round the world plane ticket and left and traveled for several months and
Wow.
did my thing. And then thought hard about what I wanted to do. The work I had been doing right before I left was serving the city of Columbus and the Ohio State University, my alma mater, and so like deeply, deeply proud of that body of work that I did with a whole bunch of other folks at McKinsey, and came back and started working at. I mean, it's a longer journey. I'm
Yeah.
happy to tell the story, but I started working at Northwestern, and then and I got the job at Northwestern because when I first came back, I wanted to work in higher ed, and nobody in higher ed was excited to talk to me. Nobody. Like
Interesting.
literally, the president of Ohio State was telling people to talk to me, and nobody was on to talk to me. And I read about the new dean at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern in the newspaper. She was one of the 10 people to watch in Chicago in 2011. And while I was reading the paper while I was waiting for a friend to meet me for brunch, and I took out my BlackBerry at the time and I sent her a cold call email because I'm not a Kellogg alum. I'm not. I don't know her, and I just said, "Hey, I'm thinking about." She had spent time at BCG, and that was in the article, so I knew that she kind of knew what I did. And I said, "Would you spend? Would you be willing to talk to me on the phone?" And she invited me to lunch. And a couple of days later, I started consulting for the school. And a couple months later, again, there's some other twists and turns in there, but we'll save those for later if you want, or another day. She gave me an offer to join her at Kellogg. And so that this kind of, you got to take your shot,
Yeah.
right? Because like the worst thing that was going to happen is that she didn't answer the email. And the second worst thing that was going to happen is that she was going to say, sorry, I can't help you. Both of those things are recoverable moments, right? But if I hadn't, like literally, if I hadn't seen her in the paper, I wouldn't have sent the email. If I hadn't sent the email, like I for 100% certain,
Yeah.
I would not have worked at Western.
So the moral of the story for me, the lesson for there, it just takes one leader to recognize maybe something in you or something special for you to have that
Yeah,
opportunity. You don't have to impress all these leaders. You don't have to be the perfect resume for everyone. It just takes one leader. And that's how important leadership can be. It can change the pathway of many people. We're almost at the end of the half hour, but I do want to ask you one final question. You've
sure.
worn a lot of hats, whether it's a mother, a CEO, a partner. Tell me your biggest underdog position. What has been the most challenging role that you have played in all the roles you've played?
Oh, look, I think all of them, it's hard for me to answer. I think all of them have had their moments of being extremely difficult and in very different ways, right? So at 1871, the most difficult moments are taking a nonprofit organization that relies on people being physically together and a business model that relies on or did rely on people leasing space in some part of in our physical location through the pandemic, right? the hardest professional experience I've ever had.
Wow.
Um, that wasn't, again, it wasn't like me
Yeah.
being an underdog, but it was me being the leader and being surrounded by all these people that in their job as a founder, solving hard problems and overcoming obstacles and like inspiring me every single day to help that helped me figure out, okay, how am I going to do the same for our as a leader of this community, and who do I need to bring in to help me, and other brains and you know connections to help me strategize how to kind of move through it, which we've done,
Yeah.
right? That like super hard. um at Northwestern, very different, like they're all I've
Yeah,
had
you've had a lot of
experience.
scenarios, and it's almost an unfair question, but I think in the end you've done a lot, you've gotten through a lot. You actually say that you weren't an underdog in certain scenarios, but I actually think you're an underdog in many of these scenarios. It's just that you're used to problem solving and digging deep and using what you now know you have to overcome adversity. And what I want to share with other folks, I think there's a lot of people who are in these adverse scenarios who feel helpless, don't feel empowered, don't feel like they can ask for help. But many times you have to look inside and dig deep. And only you only go that deep sometimes when you're in this adverse scenario. That's actually why I like the underdog story. It can bring out
Yeah.
our best, even though it's extremely stressful. But I
I Yeah,
but
let me just say one. I know we're at the time, but if I could just say quickly, I agree with that, Naveen. I don't think of myself as an underdog. I never have, but I also am. I feel very comfortable saying I don't know, or asking for help. To your point, and I see so many people resisting the urge to do that, and there are lots of people out there ready to help.
Yes. So let's continue this dialogue on a future show. I'll be bringing more guests. Thank you, Betsy, for joining us today.
Thanks,
My
Naveen.
goal is to bring out successful people on this show. Know that successful people ask for help. They feel stressed and in situations that sometimes they feel like it's not in their control, but it's really about what we do next. It's that decision. It's asking for help, and it's trying to share these experiences because we all collectively go through adverse situations. So thank you very much, Betsy, for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show and want to continue to learn more, follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Help us tell these underdog untold stories by sharing it with people who could learn and be inspired from it. Remember, underdogs don't stop.